Hey everyone! Our story begins with a woman named June who lives in a rustic wooden house deep in a forest. After waking from a nightmare, she prays that the ancient wood will protect her family from the great evil. Only then does she find the courage to open the front door. June slowly strolls along the porch and carefully steps down to inspect the grass. At that moment, the gentle hum of insects transforms into a low, ominous moan, and a dreadful apparition appears beside the stairs. The eerie figure stretches out its arm but cannot cross the threshold or touch her. Returning inside, June climbs the stairs to wake her two sons, Samuel and Nolan. She tells them that breakfast will be ready in just 10 minutes. Their only other awake companion is their dog, Kota. Soon, Samuel jumps out of bed and alerts his brother that there are now only 9 minutes left. As Nolan finally gets up, we notice he wears an ankle bracelet adorned with jingling bells, like a makeshift alarm. As the boys begin their day, we learn that they have always lived under the threat of the great evil, a malevolent entity capable of assuming any form to deceive its victims. Determined to protect her children from even the slightest touch of this terrible force, a touch that could cause irreversible contamination, June does everything she can. The wooden house is their only sanctuary, and food is extremely scarce. In the afternoon, the family prepares for the hunt. Taking every precaution, they secure 3 ropes to the base of the house to keep themselves safe from outside dangers. Each of them wears a handmade whistle around their neck, and before tying the rope around their bodies, all 3 recite a solemn prayer. The final part of their ritual requires the boys to chant the mantra, "Never let go." Once this is complete, the 3 of them set off in different directions in search of anything edible. It isn't long before the great evil reappears, tormenting June in the guise of an older man. Yet she remains steadfast and shows no weakness, a quality she has always instilled in her sons. She reminds them that the world was already harsh long before the great evil arrived. That very cruelty is what opened the doors for its presence. June recalls that her own mother was among the first to recognize the truth. Although no one believed her except June's husband, who built the wooden house as a safe haven, the warnings went unheeded until now. With little choice in the matter, the family must accept what is on their plates. The boys are thrilled to find reptiles in the forest. Samuel even catches and eats a small live frog. Enjoying the story so far? Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support powers our adventures. Meanwhile, Nolan climbs a tree in search of a bird's nest, but finds only empty shells. Then, his eyes light up at the sight of a perfectly intact egg on the ground. He dashes to grab it, but a fallen log blocks his path. Nolan has reached the limit of his rope and cannot take another step. Frustrated, Nolan pulls with all his might but makes almost no progress. When his brother approaches silently, Nolan begins untying the rope. Outraged by this, Samuel threatens to blow the whistle and alert their mother. Nolan insists he had no intention of letting go. He only meant to loosen the knot to reach the egg. An angry Samuel retorts that he should have called their mother, since she knows how to extend the rope by splicing in extra pieces, and reminds him that the egg might be yet another trick of the great evil. The 2 brothers continue trekking through the underbrush, with Samuel a few steps ahead, confidently proclaiming that being older makes him the wiser of the 2. However, when Nolan hears the phrase, "She loves me more," he takes it very seriously and immediately asks his brother what he meant. Samuel looks back, confused, and swears he said nothing. Although Nolan is momentarily uncertain, his hurt feelings soon subside until he accidentally steps on Samuel's rope. The jolt is so strong that the rope comes loose entirely, and Samuel rolls down the hill, breaking his foot in the process. For a brief moment, Samuel forgets his pain when he realizes the rope has been left behind. Then a hissing sound emanates from a tangle of twisted trees directly ahead. Overwhelmed, the boy covers his ears and closes his eyes, trying his best to block out the approaching enemy. Unable to reach his injured brother, Nolan decides to let go of his rope as well. At that very moment, June faces a similar dilemma. Her own rope has reached its limit. As soon as she releases her grip, a white-haired woman emerges from the thicket, her face contorted in a series of eerie expressions. Alarmed, June gathers her sons and quickly ties a fresh piece of rope around all three of them. The elderly woman crouches just behind June, and the boys realize that their mother is seeing the great evil. She repeatedly asks if either of them has been touched, and they assure her that they haven't. When Nolan inquires what she sees, she enigmatically replies, "Nothing." Outside, their faithful dog Coda waits on the porch. As soon as the family crosses back over the threshold, June dramatically throws the boys onto the floor in front of a relief illustration. Clutching a knife, she orders them to touch the drawing and recite a prayer aloud, the only way to verify they haven't been contaminated. Convinced by the ritual, June finally puts away the knife and carries a limping Samuel to the sofa. Nolan begins to explain what happened, but their mother refuses to listen to his apologies. Instead, she tends to Samuel's fractured foot before repeating Nolan's question about what she saw in the woods. June solemnly reveals that the old woman is her mother, and that the great evil always appears to unsettle people. Later, June cooks the reptiles the family hunted that afternoon. Since the expedition was cut short by the earlier incident, her dish is nearly empty, barely enough to be shared between her two sons. As they eat, she begins to recount another eerie incident from long ago. She explains that the great evil once appeared in the form of a distressed little girl, just a few meters outside the rope's protective radius. The child, trapped with one foot immobilized, cried out daily for help. Every time June returned to that spot, the little girl was still there, growing weaker and sicker with each passing day, as if the malevolent force wanted her to evoke both doubt and pity. Without delving into too many details, June reminds the boys of the danger they face and makes them repeat the mantra, "Never let go." The next day, the boys undergo another step of purification. One by one, they are confined to the basement and encouraged to let their imaginations run wild. Nolan spends an hour down there and later tells his mother he saw the house being swallowed by darkness, along with his entire family. Only when he focuses on the power of maternal love does the darkness begin to recede. That night, with no new notebooks available, the brothers draw on pages from old books, pretending they have wings and are free to fly. Before going to sleep, Nolan asks if Samuel noticed anything unusual in the forest when the rope came loose, a phenomenon that has never happened before. With unwavering faith, Samuel insists they were simply lucky, and that luck prevented the great evil from capturing them. Then, Nolan broaches an even darker subject, mentioning their father and grandparents, reminding him that everyone was touched by the great evil at some point, and that June had to sacrifice them to protect her children. Nolan wonders aloud what their mother would have done the previous day if both he and Samuel had been tainted. Samuel, disliking such grim conversation, insists that their mother has never lied to them. Meanwhile, on the porch, June is sharpening a knife when she suddenly hears a man's voice calling her name. It is the ghost of her long-departed husband, following her outside and trying to provoke her. He accuses her of having run away from home and lying to the children about the end of their marriage. June, irritated by being addressed by her own name, retorts that she is a different person now. Her husband continues his taunts from outside. Unable to enter the house, he vows that sooner or later June will let go, and then the great evil will turn her against her own children. Later, while Nolan helps his mother in the garden, she notices his curious expression. Revealing a snake tattoo on her back, June explains that she acquired it during a time before the end of the world, when she was as skeptical as Nolan and refused to believe her own mother's stories. That period, she recalls, was just before the apocalypse, and she was lucky to return to this house in time. Once the great evil spread, everyone was forced to turn against one another. Encouraged by this rare moment of openness, Nolan hesitantly asks if there might be other houses like theirs, where people could have found refuge. His mother categorically denies the possibility, insisting that only the three of them remain in the world, and that must be enough. Time passes, and the family's situation worsens significantly. A harsh winter drives the forest animals away, the food supply dwindles nearly to nothing, and their meals become smaller and smaller. One of the few small luxuries they have left is an old hand-crank record player, which they are allowed to use only once a month on the night of the new moon. Although the boys' faces light up at the chance to hear music, Jun cannot shake the ever-present threat of hunger. Later, as Jun bathes, she is startled to discover that Nolan has wandered into the bathroom, staring blankly. Recognizing this as another episode of sleepwalking, she gently takes her son to bed and reattaches the jingling bells to his ankle. The next day, Jun goes hunting alone, combining the 3 ropes to extend her reach. Aiming carefully at a crow, she suddenly sees the bird pecking at something. To her horror, she witnesses the great evil manifesting in the form of Nolan. No other animal appears after the crow, and with a heavy heart, she is forced to fry tree bark just to feed her starving sons. Since the longer rope hasn't provided adequate protection, the 2 boys resume accompanying their mother in the afternoons, helping her peel bark from trees. As Nolan works, a shifting shadow suddenly catches his eye. The boy freezes in terror, noticing that his ankle bell still jingles. Then he feels his rope being tugged, and before he knows it, Nolan is dragged through the woods toward an old well. When he finally awakens, startled by what he believes was just a nightmare, he finds himself outside the house without his rope, while something indistinct moves among the bushes. His heart calms slightly when he sees it is only Coda, but then his mother suddenly grabs him and ushers him inside the bedroom. Samuel, panicked by the sight of an empty bed, rushes downstairs. Nolan is forced to undergo the purification ritual once more. This time, Jun makes him repeat the sacred mantras several times before confining him in the basement. Still trembling with fear, Nolan later tells his brother that they need to search for food elsewhere. The 2 know the forest well enough to avoid the great evil and gather what they can. Samuel, speaking softly to avoid alerting their mother, listens as Nolan explains their plan. However, Samuel quickly rejects the idea, insisting that Jun always knows what is best, even though Nolan admits he is no longer so sure. The next day, Jun rummages through an old trunk and finds her long-forgotten Polaroid camera. She explains to her sons the magic of photography, showing them images from a time when life was normal. In the camera, there is only one remaining photo, and she confides that she is saving it for a very special moment. However, she doubts that moment will ever come, as winter is far from over and the chances of survival grow slimmer. Noticing the boys' fearful expressions, she reveals one last grim option: the dog, Coda, whose meat could sustain them for over a month. One of the faded photos shows Coda as a tiny pup, having been with the family since the boys were very young. Though the decision fills them with horror, it also signals that Coda's time is running short. Devastated by the prospect, Nolan explodes with anger and accuses his mother of being the true source of evil in their lives. In response, Jun explains that the great evil's plan is to make her children doubt her completely, and it appears to be working. Instead of imposing her will as she always has, she decides to consult Samuel, leaving the final decision in his hands. Surprisingly, Samuel agrees and even volunteers to carry out the plan, sparing their mother further suffering. Outraged, Nolan storms out of the room, screaming that he hates the house, and he runs off to seek comfort in hugging Coda. Jun quickly intervenes, firmly separating Nolan from the dog, and takes Coda to the greenhouse shed. Overwhelmed by emotion, she breaks down in tears during their farewell. Convinced that sacrificing something precious is her only chance to save her children, she regains her composure and prepares her bow. At that exact moment, Nolan reappears, brandishing a machete, and declares that the great evil exists only in his mother's imagination. Determined to prove his point, he rips her rope and locks the door, preventing her from re-entering the house. The house trembles with turmoil as Jun pounds on the door, begging Nolan to let her in, convinced that nothing will happen to her. Gradually, Nolan's expression softens as he begins to see the painful truth. Soon, his brother re-emerges, and the two engage in a fierce struggle. Amid the chaos, Jun desperately tries to break a window. A disembodied voice from behind her calls her a naughty girl, and from within the shed, the apparition of her own mother appears, ready to attack. The specter accuses June of poisoning the family's food and revels in the thought of revenge, warning that she will destroy everything June holds dear. Clutching a shard of broken glass, June vows that she will never let that happen, and, to prevent the great evil from harming her children, chooses to sacrifice herself by entering the shed. As June steps into the shed, Samuel struggles to accept the grim reality and attempts to rouse her, while softly reciting the mantra through tear-filled eyes. Shocked by the consequences of his actions, Nolan begins wrapping the rope around himself, uncertain of what to believe. In the absence of their mother's guiding presence, the brothers feel utterly helpless. Meanwhile, as Nolan tries to keep them fed, Samuel sinks into depression. He laments that he once sought his brother out in the middle of the forest, mocking his own loss. Nolan tries to dismiss it as just a bad dream, but Samuel insists he felt the cold, eerie touch of the wood before reluctantly accepting his meager bowl of soup. The following morning, determined to find food, Nolan sets out alone. Using the trick of joining ropes to extend his reach, he ventures further into the forest than ever before, discovering new, unexplored areas. Just as the rope nears its breaking point, he stumbles upon a road he has never seen before. Clinging to a hopeful heart that there might be other people in the world, Nolan shouts for help at the top of his lungs. Receiving no response, he returns home dejectedly and carefully climbs the steps, only to be startled by the sound of an approaching stranger. A man's voice calls out, and the stranger introduces himself as Cole. He explains that he was out for a walk when he heard desperate cries for help and decided to investigate. Noticing Nolan's wary demeanor and the disheveled state of the house, Cole asks if everything is all right. Having never encountered the great evil or any other adult besides his mother, Nolan is unsure how to react, yet he takes a risk and asks for help, mentioning that his brother is in dire need of food. Cole replies that he has some provisions in his backpack and even offers them a ride, saying his car is nearby. Before long, Samuel emerges onto the porch armed with a bow and declares that he is not a fool. He will not fall for Cole's trick. He accuses the outsider of having taken their mother and shattering the family. Confused and frightened by the aggressive child, Cole promises to leave immediately. However, Samuel refuses to let him go. Nolan insists that the man might be genuine and urges Samuel to give him a chance. But then, in a sudden change of heart, Samuel yells, "Shoot him!" and pulls the trigger. Cole is struck, yells in pain, and limps away as fast as he can. Nolan follows him and soon finds him cowering behind a tree. Realizing that there is little that can be done, a feminine voice suddenly startles Nolan as he sees Cole clutching a cell phone, a device he does not recognize. While Cole begins tugging at his backpack, Nolan grabs the other strap and struggles to stop him. Though Cole fights back, Nolan wins the struggle and takes the bag home. Safely inside, Nolan opens a can of food. Despite his hunger, Samuel stubbornly refuses to eat, still convinced that Cole was nothing more than an apparition. Although Nolan tries to reason with him, Samuel will not accept any explanation that might tarnish their mother's memory. However, as the night wears on and hunger speaks louder than stubborn pride, Nolan quietly nibbles at the food and rummages through the rest of Cole's backpack. In the wallet, he finds a photograph of Cole with a young girl who appears to be his daughter. This discovery shakes Nolan's convictions, and guilt begins to gnaw at him. Unable to sleep, he retreats to the porch and fiddles with a flashlight when he suddenly notices strange movement in the shed. Disturbed by the shifting shadows, Nolan cautiously steps toward the shed. He initially believes he sees June standing with her back to the door, but when he enters, he finds only a body covered with a tattered blanket. Just then, Samuel is leaving the shed when a little girl suddenly appears, claiming that her father left her waiting in the car and never returned. She describes him with features reminiscent of Cole, making Samuel visibly uncomfortable. The situation grows increasingly unsettling when the girl, upon noticing her father's flashlight, spots a suspicious lump on the floor beneath the blanket. Terrified, she bolts into the woods, and Samuel chases after her, trying to explain. As he pursues, the rope around him begins to twist and tighten, as if a massive knot were forming, whispering that the girl is real. Finally, he decides to let go and continue searching for her, following her until he reaches a thin tree. Suddenly, 3 pairs of legs emerge from behind the tree and begin their frantic climb, sending chills down Samuel's spine. As Samuel watches in terrified silence, searching among the treetops for the mysterious creature, he fails to notice it descending right behind him. In a horrifying twist, the little girl transforms before his eyes into a grotesque, winged monster. Her serpent-like tongue slithers out to touch his hand, quickly crawling over his body and forcefully entering his mouth. In that dreadful moment, Samuel is transformed into something dark and evil. Meanwhile, Nolan awakens and soon realizes his brother is missing. Binding himself with a rope, he rushes off into the woods in search of Samuel. When he reaches the spot where Samuel's rope hangs slack and motionless, his worst fears are confirmed. Something extraordinary has forced his brother to let go. Nolan hears Samuel calling his name and dashes through the woods toward the distant voice. Samuel appears at the threshold of their house, looking possessed, and in one swift motion, he cuts Nolan's rope. Confronted with his first undeniable proof that the great evil exists, Nolan rushes home. Upon hearing footsteps upstairs, he slowly climbs the stairs until he reaches the bedroom, where he finds Samuel seated on the bed. A dark, ominous smoke seems to emanate from his brother, though Nolan can't quite see its source. As he cautiously approaches and touches the paralyzed Samuel, his brother begins reciting the sacred mantra. Suddenly, Samuel becomes enraged, pulls out a hidden knife from beneath the blankets and attacks Nolan. In a panic, Nolan flees as Samuel locks himself in the bedroom, turns on an old record, and sets the curtains ablaze. Minutes later, flames engulf the house, and as Nolan realizes the imminent danger, Samuel watches him desperately trying to escape through the roof. Samuel, still possessed, shouts that the house can no longer protect him. Desperate, Nolan dashes outside, only to see their mother calling him. She has somehow managed to control the flames enough to draw him in. Distrustful of what appears to be an evil force attempting to dominate him, Nolan hesitates before running away. Meanwhile, Samuel, clutching a Polaroid camera, decides to capture the collapsing moment, even as the house crumbles and Nolan remains trapped outside. Pretending he has entered the basement, eventually the apparition reveals its true form, a horrifying humanoid figure with a snake-like tongue and soulless, empty eyes. Drawing on the lessons Jun taught him about the power of maternal love, Nolan focuses all his energy on that love until, miraculously, the creature surrenders and dissolves into nothingness. Moments later, a rescue helicopter appears, descending near the ruined house. The 2 brothers, battered and exhausted, lie on the ground as the helicopter lands. The final photo taken by the camera reveals a gentle hand resting on Samuel's shoulder. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our other videos. See you next time.